Hi guys, so what are we going to work on today? I'll tell you what, we're going to work on stitching. It's called Sashiko stitching, and it's a Japanese stitch and a form of art that they used a long time ago to reinforce their fabrics. But actually all it really is a running stitch, and then the way they do it, the type of threads they use, and the geometric pattern they use. So here are some ideas that we've done up. It was a little purse that I did right here, and I used some of the stitching on it. And these are just little coasters with some of the stitching, and believe it or not, these really do go pretty quick the way we do them, because it's like a running stitch across your fabric and you're going back and forth. Here's a tiny little bookmark. Here's a piece I hadn't quite finished, but I really liked the look of it. And this is the same stitch we're gonna do today, which is the same as this, but I put it on a bag. I started working on one on a jean jacket on the pockets. So cute. So you can use the stitch on pretty much anything you would like in any colors. They just happen to usually use white or light color threads with a blue or indigo type fabric. So let's just get started. Okay, so I first want to show you just the basic concept of what we're doing before we get to our actual project so it doesn't get confusing. What I did is I used graph paper. And on this particular one, this is a very simple one, believe it or not, I'm using 1/2 inch squares. So when you are doing this one and you have your 1/2 inch squares gridded out onto your fabric, which I'll show you, you're literally gonna do one running stitch underneath, a running stitch underneath, a running stitch underneath, a running stitch, come back around and do all of these. And it goes fairly quickly. Then you're going to turn it the next way, the opposite way, and do the same thing this way. And that's how you get this fun-filled coaster. So let's get going on the actual project we'll be doing now. So for this particular project, it's a 4 by 4 inch square. What I'm gonna do is graph it off onto my fabric, and I am using 1/4 inch squares in each one of these. So I know what I'm doing here and exactly where my lines need to be. For this, I found you can use a graphite paper that's light, but it didn't seem to last very long. The thing that I found worked the best is a white pencil. And it will wash out, but then at least your lines stay as long as you're working on your project. So I know I want this to be 4 by 4 inches, even if I don't fill it all the way up. So I'm gonna start marking my fabric. You need to kind of hold it tightly. And you'll see it here in a second. I'm just gonna do my outline first. And it probably really is easier if I'm using a larger piece of fabric, but this is gonna work. And the tighter you hold your fabric, the more precise your lines will be. But even on some of them, it worked out just fine. So this is a really great ruler to use for this, because it has my 1/4 inch lines. Either that, or you just have to mark where your 1/4 inch lines are everywhere and do your lines across. This is probably the most time consuming part of the whole thing. Turn your fabric and do the same thing on this side. I know it looks a little bigger here and a little smaller here, but I can usually fix it while I'm sewing, or you can just redraw those two lines real quickly. So on this first graph, I know which lines I'm gonna be doing first, and I'm gonna be doing these lines that are going towards the right. So that's the only one I'll usually draw in. So I am just going to, I see here, I do the first one at the bottom, skip one, do the next one, skip one, do the next one, skip one, and continue on and just draw these on here to there, and then I stop right there. So I'm going to start this next line because I looked here and skip one and then do one. If you're confused at all, you can do that all the way up because I can see that. Skip one, do one, skip one, do one. So I'm going to do that all the way up right here. Then I have my guidelines. And then I know on this one I'm going to skip one and then do one. Skip one, do one. All the way up again. And if you also notice it's every other one on here. So whichever is easier for you. If you decide to go do every other one all the way across the row, you can do that too. What you want to do is fill in this first grid. And after that, you don't really need to fill it in. You'll see why. So now that you got your first lines drawn on here, we're going to start stitching. When I'm using, when I'm doing a lot of lines and it's going to be very, very thick and heavy, sometimes I'll just add an extra piece of fabric to sew through, because with all these lines, if you don't leave enough slack, your fabric is going to start to get really, really bunched. You don't have to, but I like to if I'm doing tons of stitching in it. So I'm just going to start from the back. And I like to start in the center, but you don't need to. So all I am going to be doing is going down through this corner, up and down, up, just where I have drawn these lines at is where I am stitching. But I'm doing it at an angle, so you can literally do it as one long running stitch. Now you want to leave slack. You don't want to pull your thread very tightly. I'm going to go to this last stitch, and I'm going to come over and start the next row. Now when I'm doing this, I'm not going quite to the point. I'm going to show you close up here. It's going very close to this point of the white, but you're leaving just a tiny smidge of a gap. Got this side done, I'm going to knot it off in the back and finish this other side just the same. Okay, so when you have both sides of this done and you have your first stitch, and you can see what I've done. This is your first set of stitches. which is diagram 1. Now we're gonna do diagram 2. And I don't know if you can see the difference. I have the darker marks here are the stitches we're gonna be doing, and these lighter pencil marks are the ones we just did. So we're basically gonna be doing the same thing. This stitch right here is this pencil mark right here. So I'm not gonna redraw this in again, but I can tell I'm gonna be doing this stitch, skip one, this stitch, skip one, this stitch, skip one, and keep going on and doing the same thing. Hopefully that makes sense. If you feel like you need to, definitely draw them in. Usually after I have my first sets of stitches in, I usually use that as my guide. Now, once again, I don't want to touch this edge. I just want to get really, really close. So, I'm going there, and I'm going here. I said if you're confused at all, draw them in. I'm going right next to this one, and then up to that one. Next to this one. I'm going to do this one row, and I'll draw the next line in, and you can decide which seems easier to you. Right here, up through here, right here, here. Get this right here, and I'm going to draw the next line in. Like I said, it doesn't take that long to draw them in, so if you feel more comfortable, do that. So what I'm going to do here is see, we're going to go right here, right here, right here. And once again, it really is, you can go every other one. That makes it easier for you. Okay, so I am just going to continue on. I did my first row, turning it back around, go to my next row, and finish this stitch throughout your whole piece. So on the back side, you can see you really want to keep your stitches loose. So all we have to do now is the other half of this, and then we're going to get to the last stitch. Okay, so we've got those stitches done, going this way and this way. And you can see on this one kind of what it looks like. So what I'm going to do next is the lines that are going straight down, right here. So everywhere there's a point, you're going to be going up, away from the point. So whether it's this way or coming down this way. So this is a really easy stitch because you're just literally running up and down the rows. So now we're going to do the line straight up and down. I am getting very close to this opening in between here, but not touching it. And then I'm going to go up just a little ways. I'm going to do a couple stitches here so you can see it. In between the opening and up just maybe a quarter of the next block. So up and a quarter, up, quarter. I'm gonna pull the thread up and you're gonna be able to see it really well. See what I've done there? Now you're gonna do this all the way up here, all the way up, and then you're gonna go down through this line.
You know that's a running stitch?
That's just a running stitch.
I would still do like one stitch at a time for the next one and kind of show you what I'm talking about.
Can you see what I'm doing here? This is the last stitch. So when you're done doing all your stitches up and down, you can kind of see what this looks like. Once again, if you need to, especially to start, you might want to draw your little lines in so you know exactly what you're going with them. I just put a backing and sewed around it, and now I'm just going to whip stitch or put a cute little tag on the back of this for another coaster. Here's some other little ideas. These are just little flowers. And this one's a running stitch, but they're so far apart. I don't like my underneath stitches to be more than 1/4 inch. So you'll have to literally do each one, but it's still a running stitch and leave openings in the center. And then here is a bigger purse I did. Same thing, I used 1/4 inch stitches, but I did a large block. And this is a cute, fun little one we did, and we'll have the little diagram on there. And it's a 4x4, doing your running stitches all the way around, all the way up, all the way across, and then starting here and doing your running stitch going all the way in. So that's really what all this is about, is just doing an up and down stitch with small gaps in between as a running stitch. And you can design almost anything you want. So if you want to find any of these exact diagrams that we have, we'll have them on our website. I also have a board on my Pinterest page called Sashiko Stitching, Sashiko. And that's just a Japanese sort of stitching, and then there's a lot of other diagrams. And if you just pull that up and search that on Pinterest, you'll find oodles more. So whether you use a dark fabric or a white fabric and do it as a red work or whatever you do, just have fun.